Welcome back everybody to Property Auction Hunters, and today we are talking about the most important thing we can ever talk about. That's what we're going to do today.
So, surprisingly, very surprisingly, actually, they both sold for, I think someone personally has overpaid for those.
Scrub the walls and you'll get it back to its original beauty.
It was a rather heated bidding war as well, but I think it was a brilliant property.
And I think this asset will probably...
It's just not attractive enough for someone to pick this up at auction. And I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I think this is a classic, what traders do naturally, not consciously, but what they do is...
Welcome back everybody to Property Auction Hunters, and today we are talking about the most important thing we can ever talk about, and that is results. Who was right? Who was wrong? How close were they? How far away were they? Did it sell? Didn't it sell? Who knows? Well, actually, we know, and we're going to tell you. That's what we're going to do today. So, if everyone remembers, the last set of videos that we did, we talked about a mixed-use building in NW1 in Camden. We talked about 2 semi-detached houses with fire damage. We talked about 2 telephone boxes, and we talked about a development site in Kent. Now, depending on what you fancy, depending on which one of us you like the most, and there is a competition going on behind the screen, so don't you worry. We are going to go through those results. We're going to see what sold, what didn't sell, and what the results are. So where do we start, Piotr? Which one's first?
So we'll start with Safe's pair of semi-detached houses.
Cool. Okay. So, drum roll please. Here we go. Ready? So, surprisingly, very surprisingly, actually, they both sold for over 300,000, just over 300,000 pounds for the pair, which I was surprised about, to be honest with you. And I think, actually, the person that was closest was Piotr. Piotr was the closest. So, this is the power of social media, though. Listen to how crazy this is. So, I put the post up about the video, and this guy called Tom messages me on Instagram, and he said, funny enough, my dad was the one that did the viewings. He's a part-time viewing agent for Allsop's auction. And he said, I don't know if you know, but he said someone actually died in the property. They got burnt alive, basically, in the property. So where we thought maybe it is a bit dark. But basically, where we thought maybe fire damage wasn't very extensive, clearly if someone's passed away in that property from the fire damage, then it might have been worse than we thought. And he just said, his dad's a part-time viewing agent for Allsop's, and he basically was like, I did not expect it to sell for more than 300,000 whatsoever. He said I was even surprised. So just so interesting to see what, that's the power of social media sometimes. But I was very surprised. I know we were talking off air about how strong the December results have been compared to a normal December. December's normally quite quiet, but it clearly shows that people are being opportunistic in December, as we saw in August compared to normal August as well. So all in all, interesting result. Way higher than what I thought was going to sell, but I think someone personally has overpaid for those for that pair.
And it also shows how important it is to go to the property and just kind of do a little bit of just conversations with neighbors, with agents, and find out those kind of things that can affect the property. If this property was in Japan, no one would ever buy this, because people don't buy properties that someone died in. Sad.
Also, one of the things that are quite interesting is that's part of material disclosure. You have to notify a buyer if someone has passed away in the property. But it may have been that the fire damage still wasn't that bad, because smoke damage, believe it or not, causes more deaths than fire. But if they're saying that something horrendous like that had happened, then it was obviously pretty severe. But there's certainly agree with you, Safe. It looks like the seller has definitely made a good day at auction there. That's for certain.
I think the next step, if you're the buyer watching this video now and you've picked up this pair of two semi-detached fire damaged properties, wait till January, get into the January sales and try and pick up a load of soapy, some detergent, and then you can get down to the property with some hot water and start scrubbing. Because that's the next couple of weeks for you sorted at this property. Scrub the walls and you'll get it back to its original beauty.
Yeah, not enough of a budget to be able to get someone to refurb that.
I agree.
Amazing. And it's like, it also shows that even though I was close with the prediction, but my prediction was for what the property is going to sell for, it's not kind of the price that we would want to pay for this property, or we would be kind of going in. So there's a big difference between what results are and what we as traders would purchase the property for to make money. Brilliant. Okay, well, this is the first property. Yeah, this is the first property. And Jay, I can see you're impatient. You want to share the results of your property. Go ahead, tell us about this mixed-use property in Camden.
So this was a big one. This was guided at 1.35 million. And I have to say, myself and Safe were at the 1.5, 1.55 sale price. That's where we thought it would go for. But it sold for 1.78 million. It was a rather heated bidding war as well. There were 3 bidders that were running the race all the way up close to the end, and it dropped down to the 2. I think maybe if this was sold in a February auction, Piotr was probably right. It may have made it to 2 million or close. There is clearly multiple ways to add value to this building, and it's in one of those locations where you would have to mess every single turn in the managing of that asset to lose money. But I think it was a brilliant property. It's the kind of thing that Barnett Ross does quite well, actually. They do high value stock very well. Things that have been owned by the same family or in the same company for, more than 50 years. Every time they have those, they sell really very well. So I'd argue that the seller had put it in the correct auction to get the result they had gotten. But yeah, just in case no one heard me, I'll say it again. Piotr was the closest, and we all said it was going to win, but Piotr was definitely the closest.
Well, actually, I gave a big range. I said minimum 1.75, but it could even reach 2 million. So it was quite a big range, but got there.
I think it's important. Piotr raises a really good point. I think, especially going forward in these videos, I need to focus on what I think someone will pay for it, rather than what I think I would pay for it, because I think 1.5 would have been my number. And on an underwrite, I would have been a very, very happy boy if it still went to auction and sold for 1.78. So just goes to show. But I think the seller did very well there. I think it was a good sale. Any comments, guys?
I think that the fact that, if you're sat on cash right now, and maybe we don't necessarily have that problem right now, but there's a lot of people that are sat on a lot of money, they need to deploy that cash. This is the kind of asset you really want to be deploying the money into. And I think, like you said, you've got multiple exits on it, which is really, really good. But I also think that in reality, there's loads of meat left on this bone. And I think as a trader, from a selling point of view, you want to leave enough meat on the bone. And this has a lot of meat left on that bone. So it's just that there's hope value, there's asset management value as well. There's so much value here for someone. So I think someone's still got a really good bargain. But Jay, I take your point away. Next time, it's what someone's willing to pay for it, not what we're willing to pay for it. So, yeah, Piotr, well done, 2 out of 2.
And I think this asset will probably remain in the same ownership for another 50 years or so. It was probably purchased by someone who's going to keep it, and we might not see this property again in the auction for quite some time. Brilliant. Well, what's the next property? The next property was the land and garages in Kent. Omer, that was you, right?
Yeah, so as predicted, chaps, this garage site didn't sell at auction, and I don't believe there were any registered bidders, because the price of it, in my opinion, was still too high to attract a sophisticated, small-scale property developer to take such a project on. As discussed in the last video, there's an overage clause on this site of 30%. To be payable on any uplift. If you haven't watched the previous video, watch that and you can get the information there. But I predicted that this wouldn't sell, and it's the second time it's been entered into auction now. And interestingly enough, I have approached Clive Empson since the property didn't sell, as you do, and spoken to a couple of the auctioneers there about whether they would consider a post-auction offer of 150,000 without an overage clause. I've been royally rejected by the auctioneer who's told me that the Housing Association doesn't want to do a deal post-auction and that they will be putting this back to auction again in February. So third time lucky, maybe this will sell. But I think it's going to come back to auction at a lower guide. I would imagine they would have to drop the guide another 20, 30 grand to create some interest. So perhaps we can follow this lot again in a future video. But yeah, I think it's an interesting lot, just too expensive. What do you guys think?
I think EIG has released this report a couple of weeks ago talking about relisting of properties and how so many properties right now being relisted in the auction, and the reasons why properties are being relisted for the auction, and then the actual end prices that they end up selling for. And the outcome of this whole thing was that properties are normally being relisted because of too high prices, sometimes illegal reasons and stuff like that. And they come back to the auction, and normally within the second or third time they sell, and they sell close to the original guide price. And I think in this example would be like 200k. And also be really interesting to see what the actual result of this is going to be. But in order for this property to sell for close to the original guide price, I think that the guide price going forward would need to be around 100k to attract a lot of bidding, and then maybe it will sell.
Well, interestingly enough, the auctioneer disclosed that the Housing Association, who are current seller, Town and Country, they had a valuation on this site, an independent valuation, because they were required to do that on all auction lots that they sell. And the valuation is actually for £200,000. And I commented back saying that I thought the valuation was very toppy and that perhaps they could get that reviewed, because it's got lapsed planning. There's no guarantee that planning would actually get re-established. But I think you're right, Pierre. I think, from an auction trader's perspective, if this was listed at half its true potential valuation at 100k guide, it would attract the right pool of buyers and there would be a really competitive bidding war. But at 180, it's just not attractive enough for someone to pick this up at auction and take the pain of buying through the auction cycle to pick this up. So I think you're probably right. If it was guided much lower, it would sell for a lot of money. But I think we'll probably see this in February at 150k guide, and let's see if it does get shifted then.
Yeah, I think this is a classic, what traders do naturally, not consciously, but what they do is they recycle stock. It's called recycling stock. So a trader will put into one auction, it doesn't sell, flip it from a Barnard Marcus to an auction house to an Allsops, and they'll just keep flipping it. And what they're hoping for is on that day, someone is going to overpay for it, or someone's going to pay what they need to get out of that deal. Now, with the Housing Association, they don't actually need to sell it. They're not in need of that money, right? It's just about trying to get something off of their books. So from their perspective, they can recycle that stock 3, 4, 5 times. And actually what they're doing is quite clever, but they're doing it, subconsciously. But what they're doing is quite clever because they're trying to catch the right buyer on the right day at the right money. It's that developer that's just sold the development that is willing to overpay for something because he needs to keep his guys busy or whatever it is. And I actually think they might enter this, even if they entered it at 170 guide, which obviously is still high, it might still go for 200,000 because, as we said, it's just catching people on the right day. And they're very stubborn, as we know, Housing Association. So I think trying to catch this post-auction is impossible. I think it's going to sell to someone that's going to overpay for it. Simple as that.
That's really interesting, Safe, actually. And the mindset of a trader what would be one, like you said, where they would move it from one auction to another. This has gone to the same auction twice, and it's likely that it will go back to Clive Empson again in February. And so there's not a really huge different pool of buyers, as opposed to what a trader's doing is moving it from Allsop to Auction House London to Savills, and they'll just get a different pool of buyers every time. So I'm not sure this is going to have the same level of interest as what a trader might get and get that chance of the buyer on the day. But let's follow this and see how we get on. Yeah,
you'll be surprised, Omar, with you've got to treat the auctioneers very, very differently because they all operate very, very differently. For instance, Clive Empson are very much client focused. Okay, so every offer that comes in, everything that kind of is dealt with not in terms of the instant results of the auction. It's dealt with. Is this the right price? Is this the right kind of buyer? So they're a little bit picky like that. They are well known for not doing underwriting. They sell pre-auction when it's very clear that there's no one else for it. So you don't see many sold priors. And additional to that, you don't see many post-auction sales either. They're not worried about that pre and post market. They just want the bit that's in the middle, the auction. That's the stuff that they stick to. But you know, we've done, I think, 1 or 2 post-auction deals with them, and they are, whether it's their clients or them, they're pretty decent negotiators. You know, you really have to, you know, justify within reasonable means your pricing, who you are, for them to go, right, we can now present you to the seller as someone who can do X, Y, and Z. And you see it in many different auctioneers in different ways, but they're very clean cut with how they deal with stuff like that. And I think when you understand that's how Clive Emerson operate, you know, that lowballing to start for negotiation just doesn't work with them. Not that I think that you're lowballing. I think you're probably kind of where it's going to end up anyway, right? But from the vendor's expectations and the auctioneer's expectations to where you came in at, may have been a little bit too much of a gap. But I think Safe's right. It's they're going to try and drop it incrementally until they find the buyer at the right price. But let's see what happens.
Yeah, I've done two deals with Clive Emerson. One of them in auction and one of them post auction, and I'll give you one guess as to which one was the better deal in auction. Obviously,
amazing. Final property were my 2 telephone kiosks in Brighton. So unfortunately, they got withdrawn before the auction. They were guided £5,500. So according to the rules, probably the reserve would need to be 6,000. And I have no idea why the properties, this telephone boxes got withdrawn. I did email Christian about it and to ask if they're available. But normally there are 3 reasons why something would get withdrawn. Number 1, legal reasons. Number 2, there was no one for it. Number 3, the vendor got cold feet, didn't want to commit to that low reserve price, and they basically withdrew the property and didn't want to risk selling it for so cheap. And I think that whoever was selling this hoped for about 12-15k, because that's the kind of minimum that they used to have each one before. So yeah, we'll have to wait for Off the Hook coffee shop. It's not coming anytime soon.
The other recommendation here, Piotr, is instead of emailing, you could pick up the phone in the telephone box and call the auctioneer from that telephone box, if it's still in use, to find out why they withdrew the lot. But
that would be a great thing to do. However, today's the auction day, and they wouldn't pick up the phone, and that was the only reason that stopped me. But great comment, definitely good tip. We know a really experienced business person, and his motto is yapping is better than tapping.
Yeah, I think it might have been the third option, in my opinion. And I think the reason is, although December brings about, or this December's brought about opportunistic buyers, I think those opportunistic buyers are looking for things that are pretty guaranteed, pretty straightforward. They're not looking for punts. So what we've seen sell really well this December 2023, for the purpose of the recording, is actually the lots that are pretty clear cut. The resi lots on the street on Rightmove sold for this, and you can pick it up here, kind of thing. With a bit of maybe hope value, asset management value. I think these are what I call punts, and I think these could sell well in February, March, April. But I think for a December auction, it could be withdrawn just because they've got cold feet. Probably because they just didn't have enough registered bidders, in my opinion.
Quite possible. Oh well, that's us. That's the 4 lots that we reviewed in December auctions. Pretty soon we'll be back with our February or end of January predictions, and we'll be back with more lots to discuss. Any final comments?
If anyone's got any lots they want us to review, maybe we can just pick one at random, one kind of wild card, right? So we can all pick a lot, but we'll have a wild card lot. So if anyone can drop into the comments now or later, we'll pick the comments up as well. But any wild card lot, let's have a look at it and review it.
Great stuff.
Now don't forget, hit the bell icon like and comment, but make sure you subscribe because you don't want to miss out on any of this. This is only going to get better and better as we go along.